Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lauren and today we're going to talk some books. Alright you guys, so as per usual, this video is extremely late, but that's okay. We're just gonna roll with it because in 2020, anything goes, right? So today we are going to be talking about all of the books that I read this past spring. So that means all the books that I read in April, May, and June. I will keep the synopsis short and I will also give you kind of a rating of 1 to 5 so that you can kind of get an idea of where it stands for me. So first off, we are going to talk about Where'd You Go, Bernadette by Maria Semple. This book was interesting. It was all primarily done in the style of email messages and text messages and stuff like that. So that was a really interesting style. The characters were really quirky and I enjoyed it. I would definitely be willing to try more from this author. It's unique. I'd give it a solid 3.5. The Murder at the Vicarage by Agatha Christie. Okay, so I have been interested in reading more Agatha Christie. I have read And Then There Were None and Murder on the Orient Express and a few other Poirots and things kind of sprinkled in there. I've never read any of the Miss Marple series, so I really was interested in exploring that further. So this is the first book in the Miss Marple series and it was good. I was not expecting, I didn't realize that, and this will come up because there's other books from the series in this list, but I did not realize that Miss Marple is not like the main character. In the Poirot books, he is like the main, well, that's not true either. In the Poirot books, he tends to be like the main character, or the narrative is told through somebody with him constantly. So it's interesting that she's kind of like not a significant character in a lot of the books. So, but she contributes really important information. It's just interesting. If you've read any of the Miss Marple books, look, I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. Okay, so the next is, Murder at the Vicarage. I'd give that a 3. The Gifts of Imperfect Parenting by Brene Brown. This is kind of another compilation of a lot of her talks. So this was focusing on pulling a lot of the things that she's learned from parenting. I think if you've never listened to any Brene Brown stuff, it's worth checking out. I feel like she has a really great way of speaking. It feels like you're talking to a good friend who, she's kind of self-deprecating and acknowledges her flaws, but you can tell that, she really is passionate about what she's talking about. I feel like she has a lot of great insights, and the research that she's doing is fascinating. So as a parent, I am always looking for things to reassure me that the choices that I am making are good ones, and that, because it doesn't always feel like I'm doing all the things that I should be doing. So it's kind of nice to hear what other people's experiences are and to, keep things in perspective that parenting is hard. You're not going to get it perfect every single time. And, that's just how it goes. And to, just keep doing the best that you can. And there's a lot of people out there that are going through the exact same thing that you are. So I would give this a 3.5. The Murder of Roger Ackroyd by Agatha Christie. So I had started reading another book, and The Murder of Roger Ackroyd is like one of those books that, of the Christie books, like it's up there with like the top 3. Like if you're going to read any of them, it's Murder on the Orient Express, And Then There Were None, and Murder of Roger Ackroyd. It's like, those are like the books to read. So I was reading a different story that was basically like spoiling all of these plots of like really famous murder mysteries. And so I stopped listening to that so that I wouldn't get spoiled, because they started talking about the murder of Roger Ackroyd. And I started listening to Murder of Roger Ackroyd. Now, it was a lot slower than I thought it would be. Definitely, I can understand why it's in the top 3, but it was a lot slower than I was expecting it to be. I would recommend that if you are into the murder mystery genre, that you should check it out. It is a classic, and I would give it a 3.5, 4. Speaking of the books that made me listen to that book in the first place, 8 Perfect Murders by Peter Swanson. So this is a modern book that features heavily around the plots of other books. The synopsis is that there's a bookstore owner who used to write a blog, and early on he wrote a blog about 8 perfect murders and taking the plots from different books to write those 8 perfect murders. And an FBI agent shows up and thinks that somebody is trying to copycat those murders that he featured in the blog post. And one of those murders featured in the blog post is the murder of Roger Ackroyd. So that's why I had to stop and listen to that so that I didn't get spoiled. Anyway, I thought this book was really interesting. However, if you have not read a lot of murder mysteries, either you're going to have to get on board with getting spoiled about how they are, or you need to listen to all of them before you listen to this book. Yes, I would give this one a 4. Confessions by Kanae Minato. So this is a book that was originally written in Japanese, I believe, and then translated into English. It was heavy, but good. It was good. It was heavy. It's all about a teacher whose young daughter dies, and she accuses her students, someone in the class is responsible for it, and kind of how that all unfolds. And it was heavy, but I was interested the entire time that I was listening. So I would definitely recommend checking it. I give this a 4, 4.5. So the next book I read was Twain's Feast by Andrew Behrs. So it wasn't actually his book. It was the Audible original version of this, which is narrated by Nick Offerman and Andrew Behrs. And it's all about how, through Andrew researching Mark Twain, discovering all of that he liked to write about the food in his life, and that was significant to him and meant something to him. And so this whole story is taking you through these different meals that Twain had, and how it was significant to his writing, and how it was significant within the time period, and what they discovered when they were researching these meals, and how some of them don't really exist anymore. And it was just really interesting to hear all of that. My freshman year of college, I went to a small private college in Elmira, New York, and I didn't know it until I got there, but Elmira played a significant part in Twain's life. That's where he spent a lot of his time when he was older. His family had a house there, and Twain features significantly not only in the town but on campus at Elmira. So I actually read and wrote a lot of papers my freshman year about Mark Twain. So I have this like weird connection with Mark Twain. Not that I'm like a huge fan of his, because not particularly, but I've always just kind of had like this weird connection to Mark Twain, which is just another thing. This book found me, and I really enjoyed it. I'd give it a 4 for sure. I found it really, really fascinating and interesting. Okay. The Life We Bury by Alan Eskens. This book I felt started kind of slow, but it definitely picked up, and I got really, really interested in it. It's about a college student who comes from a complicated background, and he's left home to try and make a better life for himself. But he carries a lot of guilt about the family situation that he left behind. And he's trying to be a journalist, and one of his assignments is to interview somebody. And I believe it's an older relative or person or something like that. But he doesn't really have any family that he can interview. So he goes to a nursing home looking for someone in particular, but he's hoping to interview someone who is dying from cancer, who was convicted of murdering and raping a teenage girl, and for his class assignment. With that said, obviously there's going to be some twists and turns as this story unfolds, and it was interesting. I'd give this a 3.5, 4. The next book is A Fatal Grace by Louise Penny. Earlier this year, I read another Louise Penny book. Let's see, what was that? That was Still Life. So I really liked that, and there's like a whole series in with these characters. So I figured I'd give the next one a try. I didn't like this one as much as the first one. It definitely was another one that kind of had like a really slow start for me, and I kind of had to pick it up and put it down a couple of times. But when I finally got into the meat of it, I really was interested, and like I said, I didn't quite enjoy it as much as the first one, but I will definitely keep listening to the series. So I'd give this one a 3. I listened to Fantastic Beasts by J.K. Rowling, which is just one of those compilation books that she had written for Pottermore that she then released as a book and audiobook to raise money. So it's not like a story. It's not like it's the movies or anything like that. It's just kind of like an encyclopedia of the Fantastic Beasts featured throughout the world of Harry Potter, and some that you may know, some that you may not know. I found it really interesting. It's narrated by Eddie Redmayne, and I really enjoyed it. And yeah, if you're a Harry Potter fan, you will probably enjoy it as well. Next is White Fragility by Robin DeAngelo. So I bought this book shortly after the murder of George Floyd, and it took me a while to actually get through the whole book, not because I didn't want to read it, but because I was taking a lot of notes, and so I wasn't just listening to it passively. I was actively engaging with the audiobook and with a digital copy of the book. I found it extremely enlightening. I will say that there's a lot of criticism. As much as I found this book informative and would definitely recommend it to anybody who is interested in reading it, there is a lot of criticism about this book because it's a white woman talking to white people about white supremacy. And there's just a lot of literature that exists out there written by Black people. And a lot of people criticize this book because, yet again, it's just another white woman talking about something that Black people have been trying to explain to society at large. So while I would recommend reading this book if you are a white person and wanting to learn more about white fragility, white supremacy, the systemic racism that is here, particularly in the United States, I would recommend reading this book, but I would definitely recommend reading a number of other books, and I'll be happy to link those resources down below for you. But yeah, I think this is a really good book for somebody who struggles with the idea that white supremacy is an issue, or gets very defensive when white supremacy and racism is brought to light, but they are willing to hear and learn. This is definitely not a book that's going to change the mind of anybody who is adamant that racism doesn't exist any longer. But this is the kind of book for somebody who gets defensive and gets their back up about these topics, but is willing to hear that it's an issue and in ways to move forward from it. It's a good bridge, I feel. But there's a lot of other books out there that definitely should be read in conjunction with this or other than this. So just keep that in mind if you are in the process of looking for books to read regarding racism and white supremacy. All right. Next, White Fragility. I definitely give that like 4.5 stars. I found it very powerful. I found it very profound. I took copious notes on everything that was being said in it. And as somebody who has felt that they are aware of what's going on, having it all collated like that in a book, especially given the climate of the country right now. This is something that we all need to be actively participating in. And however you need to educate yourself, I encourage you to do that. Okay, so next on the list is ABC Murders by Agatha Christie. This is another really famous Christie book. So I was saying earlier, like the top 3, like this is definitely part of that, like, let's say top 5 list. So ABC Murders is a Poirot book, and it is a serial killer who is murdering people basically based on the alphabet. And I'll just leave it at that. I would give this I guess like a 3.5, maybe 4. Yeah. Next is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. So this is the Hunger Games prequel. I did not hate this book as much as other people hate this book, but I did not like this book really at all. If you really like Hunger Games, and I do, I really like Hunger Games. I don't like a lot of tween fiction, but Hunger Games, I resisted it a really long time. And then when I finally did read it, I was hooked. Absolutely hooked. I have read them multiple times and not a huge fan of the movies, but I love the books. So I was really excited about this one until I heard that it's about President Snow. Why? I don't want to hear about President Snow. Like, I don't. And so but I went into this book, I listened to it, and I was hoping I was going to care or get something from it. And the whole time I was just kind of like really angry and didn't like him at all. And felt it was, it was manipulative. And yeah, like I didn't like this book very much. I'd give it like 2.5 stars, maybe. I guess it's worth reading if you are kind of like a purist, like you want to know the whole canon kind of thing. But yeah, I do feel like it left the door open for another book. And if they did do another book, I know which characters I would want it to be about, but yeah. I don't know, guys. If you've read this one, I'd like to hear your thoughts too. Okay, the next book is The Moving Finger by Agatha Christie. And this is another Miss Marple book. And again, is kind of like Miss Marple is such a minor character in it. I don't know. This was not my favorite of the Miss Marple books that I've read. So I would give this one a 3. I am somebody who likes to read everything in order and do the whole thing. So obviously not everyone is going to be like mind-blowing. Basically, there is anonymous letters going around town accusing people of like horrible things. That's basically the premise of the book. Somebody dies and we have to figure out who or why and what and all those things. So I give it a 3. Okay. So the next one is The Body in the Library by Agatha Christie, which is another Miss Marple. Now, I like this one a whole lot better, and Miss Marple was a much more significant character in this book. I would give this one a 4. Like there was twists and turns in this one, and while I was able to keep up and kind of like predict what was going to happen, it definitely kept me on my toes more so than other of mysteries tend to do. So I really enjoyed this one. I would recommend it. That was the last book that I listened to in the spring.
How many did I listen to?
15 books this spring. I definitely dropped off there for a little while because trying to get through White Fragility and my attention being pulled away from audiobooks and more focused on articles and education and things like that. I hope that if you are looking for some audiobooks to listen to, that maybe you found some that you might enjoy. As you can tell, I kind of have a genre. I like murder mysteries. So I do sprinkle in some other things there, here and there. And if you are an audiobook listener, leave me a comment down below and let me know what one of your favorite audiobooks has been the last few months. I'm always looking for recommendations, and if you have a favorite narrator, let's compare our favorite narrators, because I think that's pretty cool too. Okay, so thanks again for joining me, guys, and see you in the next one. Bye.